discussions on North Korea.
And what would facilitate such. And I think the discussion entails a close review of the South Korean policy toward the North. And I know we've done this 1,000 times, but I think it's time to revisit our own policy, which is aptly called Vision 3000. And because after all the missile firing and nuclear testing, the South Korean policy toward the North still remains virtually unchanged. It's still Vision 3000. And I agree with Professor Haggard that the first step in trying to revise our policy toward the North is really to understand the true intent. Because a misunderstanding of the intent may take our policy in the wrong direction and escalate the crisis. And it always reminds me of a joke about a meteorologist and an economist. Neither the meteorologist nor economist can tell the future, but at least the meteorologist can tell the present. And no offense to economists in this room, but when we're North Korean observers, we share the same predicament as economists. But North Korea still remains one of the most closed regimes in the world, and we can still try to discern a conclusion from circumstantial evidence. And I think as the discussion opens, there will be debates in this room as to the true intent of North Korea's nuclear program. And some may argue that it is for economic and political concessions, while others may argue having nuclear weapons is an end in itself. And at the risk of stereotyping those who tend to view the nuclear program as a means to an economic gain and regime survival, tend to be in line with the sunshine policy of the previous two administrations. They tend to focus on engagement. Whereas those who tend to view the problem as an end in itself probably argue that the North will never give up, never abandon the nuclear capability, and only when having nuclear weapons is not feasible in reality, they will turn to economic recessions and some other political gains. I believe the best outcome for North Korea is to have the best of both worlds. They probably want to remain a nuclear power, as well as having all those economic and diplomatic gains. And as I said, only when they cannot remain a nuclear power, they will turn to bigger concessions from the international community. And if North Korea has such dual intent, I think neither unconditional support of the two previous administrations nor unrealistic reciprocity of the current administration would be effective policy. And as we all know, the past decade, the South Korean government was criticized for extending unconditional support to North Korea in response. As Professor Kim knows very well, the Lee administration came up with a policy of reciprocity known as Vision 3000, denuclearization and openness. And the policy stipulated that in the event the North gives up nuclear capability, that we would effectuate liberalization and economic opening to raise their per capita income to US $3,000. It sounded perfect. It sounded almost too perfect to be true, and it was too perfect to be true. I think Vision 3000, I've always argued, had three fundamental flaws among many other problems. And the first was a mismatch of parties. And Vision 3000 stipulated that in the event the North gives up nuclear weapons, that the South would be the actor, protagonist, to provide economic aid. But instead, we know that the partner North Korea wants for the discussion of denuclearization is always the United States and never South Korea. So there's that mismatch. And the second problem it had was a wrong reward. What North Korea truly wants, as you suggested in your study, is the political survival of the regime. Whether it is $3,000 or $5,000 of per capita income, it would matter only if the regime remains in power. So, and also I think North Korea remains ambivalent toward the $3,000 target because that is the income level South Korea had in the late 1980s when our democracy movement reached its peak. So is it a trap? Is it a reward? I think can be interpreted as both or either. And the third problem is simply the unrealistic goal of the policy. And Vision 3000 assumes that North Korea's current income level is at $1,000, and it would be tripled within 10 years. And the actual estimate of North Korean per capita income is between 300 to 500. So to increase that tenfold within 10 years is a mathematical impossibility. So besides all these problems, Vision 3000, I always believe, has innate problems to be a feasible solution. And obviously the recent escalation of tension on the peninsula and the region makes the policy even a more difficult one to attain. I'm not here to suggest that we give up on the policy of reciprocity entirely. I think it's too early to give up, and we just need to make it more realistic. And I think we must distinguish the type of reciprocity that can be achieved only on the international level with the type of reciprocity that can be achieved on our own. And first, denuclearization, that is stated goal, is simply too difficult, if not impossible, for Korea to achieve on its own. And it should be worked through international coordination only. And so it may be our diplomatic doctrine, it cannot be our policy toward the North, because we really have limited power in that regard. And the international community should also offer a price that North Korea really wants. So instead of saying openness and $3,000, that should be replaced with a guarantee of the political system and possibly economic prosperity. And secondly, a more realistic reciprocity is needed on the inter-Korean level. For example, South Korean government can extend humanitarian aid on the condition of more transparent distribution. Or we can make further investments in the Kaesong Industrial Complex in exchange for the removal of the three major business problems, which is communication, passage through the border, and customs clearance, etc. These are the types of reciprocity that South Korea can pursue independently, and it will be also in line with the pragmatic diplomacy of the current Lee administration. So, as we look past a few weeks, the international community, despite their minor differences, finally came together to view North Korean aggression in the same light, as evidenced in the Security Council resolution. And also shortly afterwards, our president, to my relief, proposed a 5+2 discussion framework as an exit strategy, as you suggested, exit strategy from the cycle of hostility or the cycle of stronger sanctions and stronger aggressions, which may not lead to a constructive result, and to bring North Korea back to the negotiation table. And I think the time is right for South Korea to take a shot at a new form of international inter-Korean cooperation, ironically, at this time, based on South Korea's revised North Korean policy. And I think now is the time to replace the abstract and unrealistic Vision 3000 with a more realistic policy of reciprocity with an international and inter-Korean prong. So that's my comment. Wait for your response.